So, hello. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate it. I have a very, very special guest for you. You might initially go, wait a second, Kelly, how's this work with fitness? But you're going to realize as we go through, there's a huge piece that goes into what Erica Boling and I are going to be speaking about. And Erica, I'm going to let her introduce herself because she has an enormous amount of letters behind her name and it's easier for me not to mess it up. Erica, could you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my background, I'm actually a former associate professor, tenured professor at Rutgers University. And my background, my academic background is in teaching and learning and a specialty in online teaching and learning. And my passion, all growing up, I was involved in human fitness. My first job was as a swim instructor, lifeguard. I've been an aerobic instructor. I'm a certified personal trainer. Naturally, with my passion for human fitness, I'm a dog lover. I grew up with dogs and horses, all kinds of animals. Over time was I ended up getting involved in a working dog world with search and rescue dogs and the sport dog world. One of my dogs got injured, and through his rehabilitation, I started learning all about canine fitness. And so I think with my passion on the human fitness, it's just natural that I just gravitated towards the canine fitness side of things. So I ended up getting certified in canine fitness. I actually got certified first in canine massage. And I did it mainly just to keep my own dogs healthy I was competing and doing things with them. And over time, people would start to see me doing things with my dogs and they're like, hey, do you teach this? Can you show me what you're doing? Since I'm an educator at heart, I love teaching people. I love training animals, any kind of education, whether it's, working children or humans or animals. And so I was like, sure, I can do a workshop. And then from that basically grew some online courses and workshops and seminars in canine fitness. And I ended up creating in collaboration with other experts in the field, but it was I spearheaded. It's a certified canine athlete specialist. It's a certification to basically teach. It's like a human personal trainer,
Right.
people, but it's like teaching the training to the humans so they know how to build up fitness programs for the dogs. I specialize in fitness for sport and working dogs, competitive dogs, but a lot of the people who I work with are dog trainers. And so a lot of their clients are pet dog owners. So I
Uh,
basically kind of help teach the dog trainers how to learn about fitness and design fitness programs so that they can then do it and help the dog owners. And
nice.
so
Yeah.
it just kind of grew, and my passion for it was growing more and more. So it got to the point where my hobby and my kind of side income started growing, and my passion, I really got really interested into that. And I actually left my university position and then decided to go full time into the canine fitness side of things. And so we have an online academy, we have multiple courses. And then also through that, over time, we had people that also needed help on the business side. So with my background in online and teaching and learning, I also help various professionals in how to do online coaching, online teaching, and move their programs online in fitness, and also working in the human, working with human clients and getting their programs online.
So you really, I mean, you love teaching, obviously. And I found you. I mean, you're one of those people, those finds on social media, right? Where I don't even know how I found you, but
All over.
right. So you're like, you're on social media and somebody says, oh, Erica does fitness training for dogs. I'm like, fitness for dogs. And immediately my ears perk up because I've had dogs in the past that that a lot of what I talk to people about is that as we get older or as we add a few years on our bones,
Yeah.
well, if we're not staying, not just like walking, which walking is good, but if we're not also doing the piece where we're building some muscle
Yeah.
and doing the
Yeah.
strength training and doing the stretching and all of those things,
Yeah.
well, we just don't work as well. And I had this dog that was basically my heart, who she was a big Akita. And
Yeah.
tore a ACL and she tore the other ACL. And, and I'm thinking there's got to be a way to get this dog healthier. And at that point, there wasn't she
Yeah.
just didn't work. But now I've got these 2 new dogs. They're big, they're rambunctious. And one day it hit me when I saw what you do, that fitness for dogs comes all the way around, right? So
Yeah,
if our
yeah,
dogs are fit, they're going to live healthier longer. They're not going to get fat,
yeah,
and we're going to give healthy. We're going to be healthier longer and not going to get fat because we're taking good care of them. My friends who do like agility work,
yeah.
and I mean they're all running up and down like crazy with these dogs. So tell us a little bit about how you get your dog fit. How does that work?
Yep, good question. And it's interesting that we've got research that shows that that relationship is totally evident that people having dogs, number one, we know they're more social, we get out more, we're more active, it helps us to be healthier. So there's definitely that connection. What's
Mhm.
interesting, I've also found some people, they might not go out and do fitness for themselves, but they'll sign up for
Yeah.
fitness for their dog, and then they end up getting, losing weight
Right?
and fit through the program. And so it's a really nice kind of synergy between the two.
Yeah.
And when it comes to canine fitness, a lot of it is when you know like the human side of it and the human fitness and the exercise science, it's very, very similar. So some of the common things like for dogs, let's say if we have dogs that are running really hard and playing hard or doing dog sports, simple things like warming them up. And I can't tell you how many, even human athletes who have canine athletes know they're supposed to warm up, but they don't even think. A lot of the times they'll be like, I never thought about warming up my
Yeah.
dog. I always tell people that's one of the quickest and easiest ways to help prevent injury. Warm up your dog, because we'll have people that would go to training or competing. The dogs are in the car driving a couple hours. They get to the field, they're ready to train. They get the dog out of the car, and then they immediately go to running, jumping, agility, whatever they're doing. And they're not spending time warming up their dog. And so it's just like with the humans. If we warm up our muscles, we can help prevent injuries. We prep our body for exercise, so we're going to perform better. I've had a graduate of our program who races her dogs as a sport. Some people might be familiar with it, called lure coursing. And it's, short sprinting. They're running really fast. And her dog was like number 3 in the nation. She did our program, and she, like, one slight change is she started warming up her dog. And we've seen this happen a couple times where all of a sudden, like, they saw that little bit of change and increase in speed that bumped them up to like number 1.
Wow.
And they're like, wow, like all they did was, started paying more attention to what they
So
did before they, got the dog and started
racing them. So tell me what a warm up is. Like I'm sitting here thinking, I get my dogs in the car in the morning. They've wandered around my yard. I put them in the car. We get to the dog park, and heaven help them. The
Off
best
they
they
go.
can do is sprint for that gate, right? But
Exactly.
then after that, they're just kind of like walking around doing their thing.
Yep.
Is that bad?
Yeah, that could definitely. We've had dogs that have gotten injuries from that, especially if you have a dog like that's older. It's just like us. If you're sitting on the couch all day and all of a sudden I put you on a treadmill or there's a hill and I say, run up that hill as fast as you can, and you've had no warm up and you've got, 60-year-old body with a little bit of aches and pains, you're at a higher risk for pulling a muscle. I had my own dog got injured. He went to run up the stairs. And so he was just hanging around downstairs and then just went leaping up the stairs and instantly yelped in pain. And then
Oh,
he pulled a muscle. And so if they're young and, they're healthy, they're fit, they got more flexibility,
right.
they could be at a risk too, but there's going to be a higher risk. Say, think of an older person who maybe you're not as flexible, right? Maybe you're a little bit stiff. And then all of a sudden I say, okay, go out, run as hard as you
Okay.
can.
So let me ask
So
you, what is a warm up?
good question. So a warm up, if you think about a human, when we warm up, we want to just gradually start to get the heart rate, increasing, gradually start getting the muscles warmed up. We're going to start breathing a little bit harder. It's the same thing with the dogs. You'll want to warm up appropriately depending on the kind of activity you're preparing for. If my dog is just going to be getting out of the car and maybe just we're on a harness or we're walking and trotting around, I don't have to do a real big warm up. It might be simply getting them out, having them on a leash. I teach my dogs, like I grew up with horses and we would teach them to lunge in circles around on a
Mhm.
long line. So I teach my dogs I could use a 6-foot, 12-foot leash, and I teach them to kind of trot in circles going around me. Or I participated with one of my dogs in Canny Cross, where your dog has like a mushing harness and they're attached to you. and you race and run with them. So I would warm up with my dog. So we would start by walking really fast, or when I go out on the trail and I'm going to go running with them, we'll start out and we'll start walking really briskly, and then we'll do just an easy jog and then slowly start going faster and
Okay.
faster.
But
And
just
so
starting
same,
slow.
same thing with the dog.
That's a longer, that slow is a longer start. Like you take
Yeah,
long.
the
Yeah.
intensity will be different. And also, people always ask, they'll say, well, how long should the warm up be? But it's dependent on a lot of variables, because if it's 85 degrees outside, I'm not going to do a 10-minute warm up. But if it's freezing, below freezing outside, my dog's going to need, just like us, right? If it's 80 to 85 degrees outside, or it's freezing, very
Right.
humid versus not humid, if we're a little dehydrated, if we're not dehydrated. And so the warm up, what we teach is just really looking at what your dog is showing, looking at the panting, looking at the peakness of their ears, looking at their breathing and their respiration. What are the signs that the dog is maybe getting too hot? And so it's really hard. You can't really say, well, this dog will warm up for 5 minutes and this dog will warm up for 10 minutes. It's going to be very individual, and it's going to be dependent on, what's going on in the environment, the humidity, altitude, also the
Okay.
general conditioning, how fit your dog is. So just like humans,
So
it's going to
just
vary.
pay attention. Don't jump out of the don't jump out of the car and take off running.
Yep,
So,
0 to 100.
okay, so we warm them up. Let's say we've got them warmed up a little bit. Do you actually do exercises with them? And what do those exercises look like?
Yep. So there's different types of exercises. You can do exercises, say just, if you're out in the woods and on the trails, things, it's just like humans think about strength training, body awareness, stretching. It's the same thing if we want to build up a canine athlete. So for example, balance and body awareness. I was training in a park and outlining the parking lot. They had like these fallen telephone poles and I had my dog just walking on the telephone pole. It was on the ground,
Really?
like a fallen tree. And I was training, competing, doing high level sports. And I was like, oh, yeah, my dog's got good body awareness. Well, I had him walk. It wasn't super narrow, but I had him walk across this like a fallen tree, a fallen telephone pole. And he had really bad balance. And I walked him forwards and doing things like stand and sit or walk backwards. He was doing well in the other stuff I was training. But I was like, oh my gosh, I just assumed he had good body awareness and good balance. And he actually had very poor balance. So then I started doing more things like having him balance on things and stand on narrow platforms and do like a sit to a stand to a down, walking backwards on that platform, putting them on an unstable surface. So that would be like, body awareness and balance. Like if you're just out training outside, strength training could be walking up a steep hill, right? So you're going up the steep hill, just like us, where we feel it in our legs. Strength training could be walking in deep sand. That's harder. You're working those muscles and the stabilizing muscles, and you're working those legs harder. And strength training also can be we have fitness equipment and companies that make equipment and like inflatable pieces of equipment and discs and stuff. Just they look very similar to the human equipment. And you can do things like doggy squats. I did this with my
Sorry.
senior dog. Yeah, it was one of my
Okay.
favorites. A lot of our larger senior dogs, they start losing strength in their hindquarters. I have a dog right now. He's going to be 13 soon, and he's starting to slip and slide more. He just doesn't have as much strength in his hindquarters. And so you can do things like, one of my favorite exercises, you kind of put their front feet up on a raised surface, and like a human squat kind of goes sit, stand, and you work those hindquarters, and you
Okay,
can
wait.
do.
Hang on just a second. So they've got their front paws on something that's higher than their back.
Yeah,
Paw.
it might be maybe like if I have say if you have a German Shepherd, maybe they put their feet up on like sometimes they'll use a little bucket or the stair steps or
Right.
something. It might be, a foot, 8 inches high or higher, not too
Yeah.
high.
How do you get them to put their back end down?
So you teach them just your typical sit command, right?
Okay.
But you have to teach them to be able to target their front feet. So they need to understand, put your front feet on something, keep
Right.
your front feet on. And then if they know to put their feet on a target and keep their feet there, and if they know sit to stand, then usually if they know keep your foot on that target, then you just tell them sit, stand, and they just
Really?
typically
Okay.
sit and stand.
What about if somebody honestly, I'm thinking, "Huh, I don't know if I've got the time to teach my dogs to do that." They're like just standing, and then you teach them to sit lie down, get up, sit, lie down,
Yep.
get up.
That's what we start
Is that a
with.
value?
Yeah, that's what we actually start with foundational exercises, but the key is that you want them to have like humans, when we do exercise, we want to have good posture, right?
Right.
So if think about a human, like if you're doing squats and if you're leaning a little bit more on your left leg versus your right leg, you're actually building up the muscles in your left leg more than the right. But if you stand doing a human squat and you want your feet to be square, you want to be balanced and you want to have equal weight, right? In both, in
Okay.
both
So want to
legs.
make sure they're lined up when they're doing this.
Yep. So we start with the foundation behaviors is basically doing like your sit, stand, down. And also for the senior dogs, a lot of times that can be challenging, just engaging those muscles in a few repetitions. But you want to try to encourage good form because if you've got those imbalances, if you have a dog that's more dominant or they had an old injury and they're recovered, but they're weaker on one side, just like humans, if I just keep repeating the same exercise and
Right.
have bad posture, you're actually going to make your dominant side more dominant and your
Okay.
weak area is going to get more weak. And that's going to put you at a risk for injury.
How do you make them have good form?
That does come in with the training side. One of the things, when my dog got injured, one of the things was he was super sloppy. Like when he would sit and his legs were all splayed out. And they were like, okay, we need to get him. And he pulled a muscle in the groin. We needed to strengthen kind of the core muscles. I would use a piece of food and kind of lure him and try to get him to follow my hand and get into a sit. And he was very, very sloppy. His legs were all splayed out. You want to make sure the dog's healthy and there's no pain or injury. But
Right.
when you know that you can do it with a healthy dog, is I will use the environment. I will use things like barriers or go against the wall.
And line them up.
Line them up with the couch, the couch on one side
Sure.
and me on the other side.
Right.
And so I would try to help use the environment, put them on a platform. Like when I said we were walking on that fallen telephone pole,
Right.
if you put them on a little table or a little platform, that can help them stay more square. And so I would use kind of my environment to try to set them up for success and then reward it. Whenever they're
Okay.
doing it properly, then I reward
they
it. So they
get
start
that.
to associate it like, oh, this is a good thing. I get rewarded when I'm here.
Right.
Mhm.
Interesting. Because once you said that, I was like, oh yeah, you put them between the bed and the wall and, or something like that.
Yep.
Okay. So what about if you have, I'm going to digress here for just a second, but let's say you have a little bit older dog.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to want that dog trying to walk across a telephone pole. So what would a body awareness for a dog like that be?
So for the older dogs, number one, we would definitely will do like low impact activities. Body awareness could be things like teaching them, just luring them up and kind of putting their feet up and identifying, no, I'm going to step on this platform, or sometimes just maneuvering themselves up and down the stairs,
Okay.
slowing them down. A lot of times when we have people doing body awareness, the dogs are just flying around and they're not paying any attention to what their body is doing. So a lot of times is just trying to get them to slow down. And you could have like a simple little obstacle course. We'll do this with puppies for environmental stuff where you have them walking over things or under. You might put them on, they have like a board where it does a little bit, just a tiny little bit of like a little wobble.
Right.
And they walk over it and walk to the other side. Those types of things you can have, they could still go up on a platform, but it's going to be wider and you
Sure.
want it so that, don't want them falling off of anything. But again, you can kind of play around with the environment. Some dogs, like my one dog, we teach them how to do like a high five. So like balancing on 3 feet, or sitting and I'm going to sit
Okay.
and lift one leg and then I'm going to lift the other leg and do like a high
Sure.
five. You have to do a little bit of balance there. If you're going to be balancing on 3 legs, it's going to be harder if you're standing on 3 legs and a little bit easier if you're sitting. Another thing that we'll do sometimes is weight shifting, where you might have put the dog on a little table or a platform. And what you do is you just put some pressure on their shoulder, their hind end, to kind of push them off balance.
Right.
And then you kind of do this weight shifting, and then they kind of lean into your hand and put some pressure to try to regain their balance. So that's another thing that we can do with them, is do these kind of weight shifting exercises, trying to push them off balance a little bit, and they have to readjust and lean into you. So those are some more kind of subtle ways that will also engage the body differently.
Oh, so really, it's not just us being aware of ourselves in life, but we need to start being aware of our dogs, what they're doing, Because, I mean, I'm thinking about this, and I have one dog who comes in, they all have to get their feet wiped, right? So he's very good about lifting one foot, then the other, right? The other one walks in, she takes one look at me, and she just falls on her back and sticks her feet up in the air. So maybe she needs to start standing up when I'm doing this. So we're warming up. We're doing, you mentioned hills, like, and hills could be anything, like
Yep, yep.
just, as long as there's an incline going up
Incline.
and down. And then what about things like, I'm guessing this would be something because when you're talking, I'm thinking through my head, like, what would I do with people? What
Mhm.
about stepping over things,
Yep,
moving through things? Is this
100%.
another way of working their muscles?
Yeah, definitely. Number 1, you're getting the balance and body awareness, but also, like, think about crawling. So you could have a dog think about if you're lining up some chairs, like some kitchen chairs, and they're gonna crawl underneath the
Oh,
chairs. Their
oh,
belly's not completely on the ground. They're kinda
right.
hovering, and they're crawling underneath the chairs. Well, now you're getting the core muscles, you're getting shoulders, you're getting the hindquarters. So you're getting a lot of different body parts. And one of
Yeah,
my, with the working dogs and sport dogs, a lot of, just like humans, we carry a lot of tension in our lower back. Dogs are really active. They also will carry tension in their lower back and need some good core and back exercises. So with humans, you know how we'll lay on the stomach and do like this Superman, lift your
right.
front arms and lift your. So it's like, how do you mimic? How do you engage? Because that's hard with the dog. How can we engage those muscles along the spine? Because as they get older, you'll see that their back muscles, they get weak.
Right.
So the military, they were doing a research study because they had a lot of working dogs that were getting some lower back pain, stiffness, injuries. And they built into their fitness program, they had these like little low poles that you would step over. And they would have the dogs go walk, crawl under a pole and then go over a pole, under a pole and
Okay.
over, just walking and not quite crawling, but they would go really low over it and under this under, over, under, over. So if you think about it, when they go under and then come up and go over, they're engaging those spinal muscles, right? They're engaging those muscles along the back. They were doing this in some other types of exercises for strengthening, and they started to see a decrease in the lower back
Real.
and the injuries and improvement in dogs recovering and getting back to work. So I always thought that
Wow.
was really an interesting one because it's like, how do we work those muscles on a dog, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
Right. All right. So we've got warming up. We've got our space in the world, how they, work with their space in the world. It's like maybe pushing them a little bit so they have to keep their balance, finding ways to have them sit down and stand up, lay down, and keep a good form. And then different ideas of getting them to crawl, like, when you're talking, I'm realizing now why you have those tubes at the dog park that they go
Uh-huh.
through, right? Because they would have to crawl to get through that. So they're either crawling under tables or chairs or like mine crawling on top of tables and chairs
Mm.
and or going through tubes. You're up, down. I love that because
Yeah.
I do know like hips are a big deal in dogs,
Yeah.
especially when they, gain a little bit of weight. So these are brilliant. Now, you do have a training series
Hmm.
that dives into this a whole lot more. So
Yep.
we'll definitely, for everybody listening, you don't have to listen to me just like reiterate. You'll be able to get Erica's training, at least find out about her training series in the show notes, on social, all of those good things. But I just want everyone to kind of get this in their head because really, when you're thinking about it, a lot of us have older dogs. And then there are people with those brand new puppies. Like I'm thinking of some puppies in my neighborhood, and they're just like flopping around doing whatever. So stepping over things, moving under things, these are all building up muscles. They don't have to wear a weight vest. Like somebody said to me,
We actually advocate. There's a lot of other ways that I think are safer. When you think about the weighted vest, you've got that. It's basically, think about if you're overweight and you're adding more pounds on yourself, and
right,
then you're putting more stress on your joints and more stress on your spine. So that is something I prefer if we're going to do resistance training to have it more where the weight is behind them, like pulling.
like pulling something.
And one of the things that I have is on puppies, because just like there's special considerations for puppies, we don't want to have a structured fitness program and we don't want to do weight training. We don't want to do all that until they're physically mature.
Oh,
So the puppy stuff is more like self-directed play, body awareness, kind of puppy playground, environmental things where they're walking over and through stuff. But for the puppies, while they're still growing, we don't want them to be doing like distance running and jumping over,
sure.
things and preserve the joints. So there are some special
Okay.
considerations for them.
Okay. Good. I'm glad you mentioned that about the weight thing, because I know some people who put a weight thing on their dog, and I'm like, "That just doesn't seem quite right to me." There's probably other things we could do.
Yeah, if they do use the weighted vest, I would definitely veer away from any kind of high impact, you know.
Uh,
We have so much longevity in those joints and how much wear and tear our bodies can take. If I'm going to do resistance training, this would be more advanced. We always start with using just the dog's own body weight and get them fit before we add any kind of external stuff. So
okay,
drag work would be more advanced, but I prefer where, think of like mushing and where they're pulling or dragging and you're walking them in a harness and they're pulling on a harness. I would I prefer if you're going to add any external resistance to do it that way versus
okay,
putting the weight on top of them.
okay. No, that
That's
makes I mean, it makes great sense. One of my canines has some husky in her, and
they like
heaven
to.
help that dog. Second I put a harness on her, she's like, "Yeah, let's go." So, a couple of things, because I can't keep you here all day. I would, but I can't. So that would not be fair to everybody. I just want to ask you a couple of quick things and then make sure that we've got your information in the show notes. Hydration. Like this is just something I was thinking about
Very
earlier.
important. Yeah.
When you hydrate your dog, one thing I know, like my old dog, I would never give her too much water because, bloat. But do they ever, like, use hydration tablets or anything for dogs, or is it just straight water?
They have different types of exercise recovery type drinks. I would not recommend like the human sugary stuff, but they do
Yeah.
have different types of things, supplements for dogs. They've done research studies where they've done like the subcutaneous fluids for hydration compared to like water that has a chicken flavor to it or some supplementation. And they didn't really see a big difference between, the subcutaneous fluids. The main thing is like get fluids in them, whatever you need to get them to drink more water. And it's really, really important because if they're just a little bit dehydrated, they're at a much higher risk for heat injury and heat stroke. They're not going to perform as well, just like how we suffer from dehydration. And for the senior dogs, like, or any dog that might have an issue where you might have an illness, a health issue, inflammation, arthritis, keep them really well hydrated. We have human research that shows if we start to get dehydrated, say if you have arthritis and certain things that you're having inflammation and pain from, being well hydrated can help counter that inflammation. And if we can counter some of that inflammation, we can minimize pain. So with my senior dog, he was having some ongoing lameness and I was giving him medication to help. And it got to the point where I was kind of at the max medication. And the vet was like, you really can't give him any more of this. It will be dangerous. And I just started really making sure I did a really good job of hydration. And that's the only thing I changed was I just really buckled down because left to his own devices, he doesn't drink enough water. And I
Okay.
just let him drink, whatever he would
Right.
want. So I started monitoring and measuring and making sure he was drinking more water. I would put like a little scoop of yogurt in it and try to get him to drink more. And over a number of months, he's completely off the medication. Before he could barely go like a mile and would be limping really badly, walking. Now, like we're jogging. The other day, we'll do walk, jog, and he did almost a mile. Some
Wow.
days I see almost no limping. And I think there's some mild arthritis. We had x-rays. There was really no real thing saying, oh, your dog, he wasn't diagnosed with any injury, some little bit of arthritis. And that was the only thing that I changed was I really started ramping up his hydration. And he's doing better now than what he ever did when he was on the medication. So for your older dogs or your dogs that,
Oh,
might have some issues, with achy joints or some pain, or, there might be, some autoimmune diseases sometimes that can affect, you might have more inflammation going on, but hydration is just like humans, like it's so important for our health, for our skin and our bodies to do what that needs to do to stay healthy. It's just as important for the dogs.
so okay. Amount of water. Like a typical person like you and I, probably about 8 cups a day, right? Like, give or take. For a dog, is there actually a number?
I don't know the exact calculation. If you Google it, you'll see where they have
Okay.
different online, different ones where you can kind of put in the calculation, how much the dog weighs. You have to base it on their weight. But I guess to just give you an idea, I have a Belgian Malinois. He's about 61 pounds. He varies between 60, 62 pounds. and I try to get in about 5 cups of water for him.
All
There
right,
are
so
there
everybody,
are online calculators, you can look it up.
that's fun. I had not thought about that. So everybody who's listening, now you have a reason to do your water and your dog's
Your
water,
dog.
right? Equal
100%.
hydration and add something to it if they're not drinking enough water. Like you said, give them something that's flavorful in there, your specialty. But can we just take a couple of minutes since this is dropping in the summer, talking about dogs and heat? This is my probably my biggest trigger point in life, but not everybody wants to hear me talk about it. So talk about like what's too much? Like what's too much? Like I will give you a for instance. I was hiking last weekend in the Texas Hill Country, which is dry.
Cool.
It was hot. It's sunny. It was probably 90 something degrees. There were dogs out there going along the path, tongues hanging way out. Um, I mean, I just want to tell everybody to get their dogs in the water and, off the trail. But
Yeah.
am I overreacting?
No, and there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misconceptions that can kill dogs, and a lot of stuff going out there on social media that is completely wrong. One of the things is younger dogs, older dogs, dogs that are a little bit overweight, unfit dogs are going to be at a higher risk for heat injury and heat stroke. It does not have to be hot outside. They can have heat stroke when they're cold. You could have sled dogs that could be near freezing and they can, be
Really?
overheating. So don't think that it needs to be hot outside for your dog to overheat. And then also, a lot of people think that it's got to be hot and they got to be exercising. There's some research that they did over in the UK, and some of the greatest incidences where they were seeing is just in the early spring, and dogs like just low intensity activities, like they're not even out running and stuff, and these dogs are overheating. So dogs can overheat, just about any time of year. It can be cold, it can be hot. So don't be deceived by thinking, oh, it's 55 degrees out and my dog can't overheat. Knowing what to look for and knowing those early signs, when your dog starts, you really see the tongue hanging out, their eyes maybe look a little glazed, they're dragging, they want to go to the shade, they're not listening. All of a sudden, it's like their senses are just not paying attention and kind of blowing you off. If we think our dog is starting to get too hot, the thing is we want to cool them off as quickly as possible. And one of the things out there is people say, don't give them cold water. Don't use ice water. Don't let your dog drink ice water. There's no research as of right now that I've known of, and I've talked to different veterinarians who have done research on this and looked at the research. Cold water is not going to be dangerous. It's not going to make your dog bloat. If you hose your dog off or get them in really cold water and wipe them down, or if they're drinking ice water, like the thing is you want to cool them as quickly as possible. And if you're using lukewarm water, if you're not, and another thing people say, don't give them water while they're exercising. If your dog is thirsty, they're probably already, starting to be dehydrated.
Right.
So if they're thirsty, I will let them drink. I'm not going to let them drink a whole bucket all at one time. But there's misconceptions out there about don't let them drink water when they're exercising. It'll cause bloat. There's
I've
no
never
research.
heard. I mean, I've heard if it's too much, but like,
Yeah.
just like us. I mean, we should be sipping some water as we go along.
Exactly. And people say, don't let them drink ice water and don't use, really cold water on them. So the idea is if their body is starting to overheat, when they start getting to a dangerous temperature zone, the longer the body stays at that high temperature, it gets more and more dangerous. So the best thing to do is to monitor and watch your dog really closely. And when you start to see them starting to overheat just a little bit, that's when you need to start cooling them down. Look at the pinkness in their ears. Watch the tongue and their breathing. When their tongue just really scoops out and it flattens out and it gets more surface exposure, if they're sticking their nose up and they're kind of gasping and deep gulping of air, like that's not good. And sometimes there will be avoidance behaviors where the dog's not listening to you or they're running off. They're going to look for shade. And I see some very experienced dog people who think that it's a behavior, like the dog is not behaving properly. In reality, the dog's overheating. They're not ignoring you because they're just being ornery. They might be not listening to you because they are starting to overheat. You need to act quickly and cool them off.
If you don't, the dogs die. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
it can go
dogs die
very
from heat
quickly.
strokes.
Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very quickly.
And it's a big deal. I mean, and I hate to dive into something that seems kind of morose. It's huge. I mean, I live in the South. I looked you up and you happen to live in some beautiful area that's probably cool.
I grew up in South Carolina.
Oh, you're in South Carolina now.
No, I'm in Maine, but I grew up in South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, South Carolina. It's
Yeah.
warm too, so, yeah,
Yeah.
we do need to be careful, and I'm glad you said something because I didn't know dogs could get it when it was still cool out,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Especially you got
Um,
like a real high dog, high drive dog and these dogs that are like these working dogs, they'll go, 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 go.
right, yeah,
If you
dogs will
ask
just
them,
keep going.
they will like my dogs, if I ask them, they will go until they fall over and like they would
Right.
die. Like I have to control them because they're so driven and they'll, if I'm like, okay, let's go and do another round, they'll be like, okay, I'll go. And so depending on the type of dog, if they've got that real high drive and high energy, fence fighting, heard of dogs getting heat stroke, dying because they're out there racing and fence fighting with the neighbor's dog running up and down the
Oh,
fence.
right.
And then they fall over from heat stroke.
Oh gosh. Oh
And
gosh.
they're doing it to themselves because they're just all excited and just running and
Well, it's
running
so
and
much fun, right?
running.
Yeah, and I mean, I think most dogs wanna please you, so they'll just keep going,
Yeah.
and so that is another myth. Then the myth is if they were tired, they would stop,
Some of
and
them won't. Some of them
yeah,
won't.
some of them won't. So, okay, let's get back into something a little bit more fun, but first, let me ask you this. Is there anything that I've missed that you would like to talk about today?
I think some of the big ones is like, I'm glad you mentioned about the dealing with the heat and special considerations for puppies and seniors. We don't want to go out with the puppies while they're still growing. And some of these dogs are still maturing to a year and a half. So just be careful. You may think that they look fully mature, but if their growth plates aren't closed, you want to be careful because you can create permanent damage if you're doing too much with them too soon. I guess the other thing to be really careful of where I see a lot of people kind of make a mistake is just like humans in our fitness, we can be very sporadic, right? We get on a kick, we do a lot of exercise, and then we go a week or 2 weeks, or we go a month and we don't exercise, and then we go back. So this idea of to get stronger and better and fitter, we want to overload. You have a fitness program and periodically you work a little harder incrementally. And what some people do is they either go from 0 to 100, like their dog is kind of a couch potato, and then they go on vacation, and then all of a sudden they're doing a whole bunch of activity with their dog. And so they made a huge jump in their overall activity level. And then that could lead to a higher risk of heat stroke because they're not fit and conditioned, sore muscles and injury. So that's one thing is to be careful. What is your dog used to doing? What is the normal activity level for your dog? And if you're going to increase it, you want to be doing it gradually. Conservative would be kind of gradually, say 10%, if you're starting to increase over the next couple of weeks. And just be careful that you just don't go from not being super active. Maybe you normally go for a hike for a half hour and then you're going to visit relatives for the weekend and now you're out and you're hiking for 5 hours, or your dog is used to hiking in 50-degree weather and now you go visit relatives and they live in a warmer climate and now it's 70 degrees and you take your dog out for an hour. Your dog's not conditioned for that. They're used to 50-degree weather for 30 minutes and now you're doing an hour in 70, 80-degree weather. Be aware of their typical activity. What are they used to doing on a regular weekly basis? And just be careful that you don't want to do kind of the extremes and do too much too soon. You might get on a health kick and be like, okay, we're going to go out and run every day. If your dog's not used to running at all, you're not going to go all of a sudden go out and run 5 miles with it. So you need, just like a human, we need to progressively build up our fitness level. If you're a runner, you're not going to all of a sudden go from a 3-mile run to a 10-mile run overnight. It's the same for the dogs, gradually building up, and don't just do that big jump too soon because that can set them up for injury. That can set them up, if they're not totally fit, for, overheating too quickly, and could have a lot of negative effects from that.
Just like us. We haven't been doing it. Start small, go slow, be consistent, and life changes dramatically over a month or a year or whatever, and stay hydrated.
Keep it fun. Keep it fun, because if it's not fun, you're not going to do it.
That's true. If it's not fun, you're not going to do it, and if it's not fun, your dog's not going to want to do it
And
either.
you're not going to be consistent. So find fun activities to do together.
Thank you so much for being here. You can tell them the name of your academy, and then obviously, guys, we're going to have this posted everywhere, but go ahead if somebody's like, I've got to Google it.
Our website is Northeast Canine Conditioning. It's the letter K and the number 9. So it's just northeastcanineconditioning.com. We're on Facebook. We're on social media. We're on YouTube. So you can also look for Northeast Canine Conditioning. If you're really interested in the canine fitness, we have a self-assessment. It's called the Canine Fitness Quiz. We have a podcast. I have a lot of free information out there. Periodically, I do free online trainings and webinars in addition to our online paid programs. So definitely check out our website. There's already a lot of information I have out there just freely available. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions on Facebook.
Thank you. And thank you. And you're definitely going to have the quiz link in there too. I really
Welcome.
appreciate you being here. And thank you to everybody listening. And make sure you check out Erica and everything she has going on. You're going to love it.
All right. Thanks for having me.